I don't know how many we need.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. All right, we are ready to start. Okay.
Seven's enough.
So thank you, everyone, for coming to the Technical Transportation Committee meeting. Our normal chair, Dr. Dunstan, was not able to make it this month, so I'm just going to kind of take us through the agenda. We do have a quorum, so we should be good to go ahead and vote on everything. So with that, the first item would be approval of minutes from our June meeting. So hopefully you've had a chance to review those, and if so, I'd entertain a motion to approve them.
I'll move to approve those.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any need for further discussion or scrivener's errors? All right, hearing none, I will go ahead and take a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, the motion carries. Thank you. So our next item is access permits, and unfortunately, I don't see anyone from NDOT here. So we'll go ahead and skip that item for now, and if someone from NDOT comes to join us, then we'll go ahead and go back to that. But for now, then, we'll go ahead and jump ahead one in the program for the TIP amendment. So we have a city bus TIP amendment, so Doug will be covering that.
Good afternoon. As you have probably heard, look through the staff report, recently City Bus received some exciting news that they received some special funding, specifically called low and no emission grant funding. And these funds are to move transit systems, whether it be facilities or their fleet, to either low or no emissions. So excitingly, City Bus has been on this march to do such a thing for many years now, transitioning to hybrid, then actually to CNG, and they are now taking the next step, the first one in the state to move actually over to hydrogen fuel cells. So it's very exciting where that the emission, correct me if I'm wrong, from these buses will be water. So the Federal Transit Administration awarded nearly $7.6 million for this grant. The grant will be used to, again, purchase some additional CNG buses, but the big chunk will be used to purchase these hydrogen fuel cell buses, plus the facilities to refuel the buses and all the ancillary stuff that they need to operate, maintain, and whatnot. So very exciting. So the process now, in order for City Bus to actually use these funds, is to amend this project in the TIP. We are starting that today with your review and hopefully your approval to recommend this to the policy board. It will be presented to the City Bus board next week at their monthly meeting. Any questions or comments? We are asking for your approval recommendation to the policy board. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Anybody have any questions? I might be able to help.
Just out of curiosity, you generating the hydrogen? Are you creating it? Compressing it? I mean, how does that
So
work?
the initial fueling station is a storage container. It's being trucked in. So it'll just be storage. It's about the size of a semi-trailer. I think in the future, when we get more hydrogen fuel cell buses, the goal would be to generate it somewhere on site. Although, as you all know, we're looking for a new facility. So somewhere with a big solar array would be helpful. Champaign-Urbana, which is not too far from here, is working on a similar hydrogen fuel production. So we have some
Does
help.
Production take up a lot of room, eat a lot of electricity? I mean, is it
Not an expert in that, but I think that the lion's share is the real estate for solar arrays. We're getting the power.
to power to create?
Yeah.
Okay.
12 years. 12 years. Same as all the other buses. What we're. So. That would be 4 hydrogen fuel buses, 3 compressed natural gas buses, and then the other items that Doug illustrated and are listed in the.
Okay, so then if there are no further questions, we would entertain a motion to approve this amendment to the policy board.
I'd make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving this amendment to the policy board, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. All right, the motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so then our next item under the MPO update is another exciting project here locally about the RAISE grant that REC recently received, and David's going to tell us a little more about that.
Thank you, Tim. David Hiddle, Area Plan Commission. Just real quick, some information, good information. The MPO was the lead applicant in a proposal for federal funding for realization of Phase 2 of the Wabash River Greenway project, which would be the bulk of a connector loop, pedestrian bike connector loop for West Lafayette, the county, leading up to the state park. The award that we just got, I say we loosely, we're the lead applicant, but this has very much been a REC, Wabash River Enhancement Corporation driven project from the get-go. And in fact, kind of a testament to their perseverance, they took a shot for this funding last year and the year before, I think, and were denied, and they got it this year. And it's $25 million to account for several new miles of trail along the river, a new pike and pedestrian bridge crossing the river. The trail would lead all the way up to Athenaeum Park and then include some trails within the park, several new bus shelters, and coordination with bus routes. So there's a multimodal element to it as well. It's really big deal. It's the most of a single award that REC has ever received, and really that projects along the river like this has ever received for bike and ped activity. So we are very happy to at least put our name at the top of the application. So there'll be much more coming on this as it unfolds. So don't ask me any questions now, maybe later when I have more information. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely an exciting thing for our community for sure. And I do want to note, just for the record, that Bill Smith from NDOT has joined the meeting in progress. So with that, we will go ahead and hop back in the agenda to the access permits. So Bill, if there's anything specific you'd like to highlight with these access permits, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you. As always, if anybody has looked at them and have questions, I'll try to answer them. The one I want to highlight is literally the last one on the list that says Sagamore Commons, Sagamore Parkway, just north of Cumberland. The new traffic signal is now operational. So you're shaking your head yes, so at least one person in the room already knew that. So that's been in the works for a while. Any questions for me? If not, thank you, Tim.
All right, very good. Thank you, Bill. So we'll go ahead and kind of hop back in the agenda to the regularly scheduled program. So our next item is a FY23 federal funding update. So Doug, if you'd like to go ahead and talk to us about that.
This basically is an update of what is currently going on with the additional $141,000 we have received from NDOT for fiscal year 2023. When they went through and finalized all their federal funding numbers, we magically received these additional funds. I know it's not much. Starting in, I believe, May, and then finalized through the policy board in early June. These funds were allocated to the Yeager Road project for construction, so it'll reduce the county's burden somewhat small, but it will reduce it a little bit. So normally after our policy board approve it, it is sent to the district office. They process the paperwork, and then that information goes to NDOT central office for an amendment to the STIP. Normally, since it was early in the month, we would hear something in late June, the amendment number or the information As to whether it has been processed, unfortunately, we have not heard any word. So earlier this week, we reached out to them, and, well, guess what? It fell through the cracks. So Monday, they processed the paperwork through an emergency STIP amendment, and it went out Monday afternoon for their 3-day public comment period. And once that is finished, which should be either later today or they'll finish it, probably and send it tomorrow morning, it be sent to Federal Highway Administration for their review and approval. So basically, we hopefully will receive a quick turnaround on this since they considered it an emergency. Because basically we need to obligate these funds by the end of September. So it does leave a little bit of time, but we wanted to make sure not to lose this amount of funding. So hopefully in August we can then process the paperwork and the county will have some additional federal funds. Questions or comments? Yeah. At this point, it's our understanding, no, because we are still under the 2022 TIP. The 2024 TIP has not been officially signed yet by the governor, so we're still processing it under the current TIP, the 2022 TIP. So at this point, it's our understanding we should be good to go. So, yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask, what does that bring, when we discussed this, I think the project was only like 60, if my memory serves right, like 60-some% funded, is that?
Yeah, it's like 65, 66% federal funds. I mean, it's still a large amount. The county will have to pay for what should be a 20% match, but unfortunately, NDOT is not going to be, or give us additional federal funds, even though I don't know what they're doing with the federal funds from the Bloomington, and not Bloomington, but Terre Haute and Muncie MPOs, especially the Terre Haute MPOs. Since their federal funding is zeroed out when we receive the statewide funding information, so we're not sure what's going on with them.
Yeah, they have some challenges with not having an active, up-to-date MTP, and there have been some conversations, I know, between their leadership and NDOT. Obviously, we're not privy to those conversations, but that's something they're working out, so that's why it's showing up the way that Doug says, which of course is very unusual.
I think some of that is also the inflation. We've had some conversations with Kathy and actually moved a couple of projects because they're over programmed for 23, 24, 25 at least under the new estimates. And when you call up and say, I'm at 60%, can I get better? And they say, well, you can get better if you move.
Yeah.
So we moved a couple out to try to get funding, and they're very anxious to do that because they're overprogrammed. When the prices all went up, you know, they program this stuff 5 years at a time. So it's life.
Okay, so then the next item on our agenda is some NDOT coverage counts. So Doug, if you'd like to start discussing those.
Yes, we continue to monitor the 3 coverage count stations. The one on I-65 is located just north of the Tippecanoe County line. The one on US 231 is located around County Road 800 South. And then the one on Sagamore Parkway is located just west of Paramount Drive. It's a good indication to understand, at least with just by these 3 counts, what traffic is happening in the area. Of course, I-65 is mostly comprised of traffic going through Tippecanoe County. But for this analysis, we only included 2021, 22, and 23 counts. These are fairly hard to see, that small in the packet. But anyway, if you look at the 3 years, they all appear to be similar, 2023 counts versus 21 and 22 for I-65. The interesting tidbit of information for this count location is that already this year, twice the ADT on the interstate has surpassed 60,000 vehicles a day. So as you can see, in looking at the 2021 and 2022 counts, it doesn't happen very often. Yes, we do have a peak here in late June, which it does pick up. But then you see the big increases around the Thanksgiving holidays. But, we had a spike here basically around Labor Day weekend, or Memorial Day weekend. So I would suspect that we will start seeing these spikes over 60,000 becoming more and more prevalent. So kind of just something interesting that, we'll present, of course, probably in 3 or 4 months from now again. US 231, unfortunately, this count location, there are times where the counter just simply stopped working, so we have some missing data. But for this year, actually, the counts were starting to go up, but then in late March, the number of vehicles started dropping off. Why that has occurred, I don't know. We haven't done any more in-depth analysis to see if that's for a specific reason like a project or not. I don't think it has been. But anyway, as you can see, for the green line, I know it's really hard to see up there, my apologies, but it is starting to drop off some. And then on Sagamore Parkway, this year it appears that the counts are slightly higher than the previous 2 years. Already twice this year, the count has been over 20,000 vehicles today, with one right there at that number. And it's interesting, of course, if you look at the summer months, not only the information we have this year, but for the previous 2 years, of course, not surprising that in the summer months, the amount of traffic actually decreases, and of course, that's directly related to Purdue University students not being here. So yes, Purdue does affect the traffic even at this location. So just kind of a quick highlight of coverage counts at these 3 NDOT locations. Any questions or comments?
All right, in that case, we can go ahead and move on to the next item, which is an update on US Bike Route 37.
Well, earlier this month, our staff met with several staff members in NDOT, specifically their central office planning department. And 2 persons we met with directly deal with the US bike routes in Indiana. And we were provided comments from the public information gathering, the 2-week period that they had open. Basically, there were roughly 19 comments, of which 7 of those were negative. And after receiving those, or at least we received a summary from NDOT, we reviewed those internally. One was just a general comment that, it was very difficult to respond to because there was no specifics given. 3, we figured out fairly quickly that it was they're from the Indiana Trails group. Kind of interesting in terms of they were pointing out railroad stations. For one, they wanted a connection to the Dyer station up in northwest Indiana, which when you look at a map in the US bike routes, even though it's roughly 5-6 miles away from the proposed 37 route, it's actually closer to the US bike route number 36, which has already been established years ago. So in order to make that connection, you'd have to move both bike routes. So they also recommended that they go by all the Amtrak stations, which I guess they didn't look at a map because the proposed route actually goes by the Amtrak station in Rensselaer. And then, of course, we all know it goes by the station here in Lafayette. It does not go by the Crawfordsville station because the route goes to Indianapolis and not to Crawfordsville, which was another their suggestion. So instead of going to Indianapolis and then southwestward, they wanted to just strictly go to Crawfordsville and then to Bloomington and then south to Evansville. So that doesn't align with the National Corridor Plan. The other three comments were directly related to the route being on state roads. One specifically on US 231 north around Rensselaer and then State Road 16. We actually looked at NDOT's traffic count data, most specifically the recent counts that they did, and then used Purdue University years ago actually developed a formula to figure out quantitatively if a road is suitable to use as a bike road or not. And then we actually looked at that data and found that overall, that US route and state road is suitable to moderately suitable. The only issue that really jumps out is the amount of truck traffic that they consider. 10% is the max, and at both roads it was like 11 or 12% at various locations. The big one, of course, is State Road 43 or North River Road. There were 3 comments regarding that. And, of course, you know, with the recent announcement that David touched upon with the side path or trail along River Road, that should make it safer for cyclists who want to travel along River Road instead of using the road itself, actually use that. And then we had, of course, several recent improvements, the intersection there through Stu's program, the improvements at 500 North and River Road, and then bringing up and improving the section south of Riverbend Hospital. So we have finished our detailed follow-up or response, and we'll be sending that soon to them. So what's next? NDOT is wanting to do 3 things. One is continue with the internal review. The second is, again, to reach out to the districts, and we asked specifically what are they looking for. They didn't provide that information. And then seek cycling feedback on experiencing the route, which is not required, but they would like to do. Unfortunately, what we did here is that the next application cycle is in September, and at this time they have no plans to submit that application this fall. So at the meantime, we're going to then send them the information, our responses, and then probably figure out a game plan as to what to do next, which will probably include other groups such as the Wabash River Cycling Club, Bicycle Indiana, and whatnot. So we're kind of still stuck in the same spot as we were last fall and last spring when they said they were going to submit this. So that's a quick update. Questions or comments?
All right. Thank you for that update, Doug. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the 18-month letting list.
Pretty quick. Overall, nearly all of the projects listed have not changed. There has been a few changes. With projects 1 and 2, both on State Road 38 bridge deck overlays, in looking at the information on the website, this project was indeed on the July bid letting. There was only 1 bid, and it was under the engineer's estimate. But according to the information on the web this morning, it has not been awarded yet, so I assume it will be. We do have one project coming up in August, and that's on US 52. And then, but I didn't see it a couple days ago on the website being as part of the bid letting, so that possibly could change. I'm looking at further down, we have several projects that are not listed, 10 and 11, one on State Road 28, one on State Road 25, and then Bridge 64 and 65, 13 and 14, and I suspect that's probably, Stu, correct me if I'm wrong, they were moved out because of the federal funding, and we just have not received the updated information through the 18-month letting list yet. So I assume that will be updated sometime. And then on the second page, two new projects, Bridge 527, which is Old US 231, just north of McCutcheon, and then Morehouse Road Phase 2. It's a quick update of the 18-month letting list. Any questions, comments, concerns, jokes, stories?
Just a quick comment. NDOT has a relatively new practice. Just because there are bids below the engineer's estimate doesn't guarantee they'll be awarded because of budget concerns. So things are being looked at a little more closely. So don't assume.
Okay.
Hopefully it will be awarded, but there will be some that won't be just because of funding issues, believe it or not.
Interesting. How long does that usually take?
It's something new, so I don't know. But just to let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Up until now, yes, if there are estimates under the engineer's estimate, then we always see them awarded unless there's some problem with the bid. But now they're all being reviewed, even when there are good bids, and they may not be awarded.
Okay, now is that only with NDOT projects or also LPA projects?
I know it's with NDOT projects.
Yeah. It wouldn't make a lot of sense that it would be LPA, because we're picking up the slack.
Okay, well, thanks for that interesting information.
All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to our next item, which is other business. And I actually do have something for this. This is brand new, hot off the presses. So this morning, there was a special meeting of the MPO Council in which they discussed some proposed changes to the Community Crossings program. Obviously, these changes are not necessarily finalized by any means. They may never get finalized. But it was kind of a proposal that was presented. And essentially what it was is to kind of change things from the current structure where basically everyone has, a chance to get up to $1 million to looking at more of a, well, how much VMT do you have in each county? So what this would do was this would essentially eliminate the need or putting in those applications, every time there's a call for projects, and it would fold it into some of the regular funding mechanisms. So the way this was presented was that, this would be theoretically advantageous for people because you will know how much funding you're getting instead of having to apply for it. They did not necessarily go county by county and cover how much each county would or wouldn't get. My guess would be that we have enough VMT here in Tippecanoe County that we would be hitting the max. We may even gain a little bit from this, but I don't have any numbers to support that. This would essentially tend to maybe, let's say, hurt some of the more rural counties in terms of because they have less VMT, they would essentially be donating, so to speak, to the areas with more VMT, which would be Indianapolis, obviously. And even us, I think my guess would be that we would benefit from this just in terms of raw funding, so to speak. So obviously, that would have to go through all the appropriate mechanisms. It may never happen. It may be a couple of years before this happens. But I did just want to let everyone know that this is a conversation that is taking place, and there are people, looking at our highway funding. So at least personally, what I'm hoping is that we will kind of eventually get to the point where we and figure out some additional mechanisms to get more funding into the hands of local jurisdictions. That's my hope, but obviously I do not control that by any means. But just wanted to let everyone know that these conversations are happening, and this is brand new. Like I said, I just heard about this morning. They did mention that they were going to send around some information, so when I get that, I will forward that to the distribution list for this committee. Any questions about that? Okay. And does anybody else have any other business items they would like to bring before the committee? So then with that, we will move on to our next item, which is citizen comments. So members of the public, if anyone would like to make some comments, please go ahead. Now's your chance. Okay, hearing none, we will move on to adjournment. So if someone would like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. All right, with no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Thank everyone for your time.